Okay, so this is a React introduction. That is, let me change this slide. So I think everyone is seeing this slide. That is React 101. Is that fine?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. So the agenda is we'll look into what is React, and then we'll see what is React for and why React came into the first place, and then we'll deep dive into the React components and with some live demo. Then we'll look into very important concept in React, that is React state, and then again we have some what we call React hook, which is a new concept introducing by React to ease the state management in React. That also will do with a live demo. And then we'll look into fetching data from REST endpoint, and then use the React hook use effect to fetch the data. And this concept will do all in live demo, so that it makes sense when you need it, and when did you in which place or in which scenario you need this kind of concept or React hook. And finally, we look into conditional rendering. Now, what is React? React is an open source JavaScript library for building reusable interface components. It was created by Facebook by an engineer, Jordan, and you can find the React framework in the GitHub, which is completely open source, and you can find it in this URL, that is github/facebook/react. Now, before moving into React, we need to have a mindset shift. That is, what we are doing currently, maybe depending on your work or depending on what you are building in applications day to day. If you are coming from a Java language, C++, C, or maybe JavaScript, what we are doing is we are doing it imperative programming style. So by imperative, it means that we are giving explicit instruction of what the program statement should do, and we treat the system as it is a stupid system, and we treat ourselves as a smart guy who program all this stuff. So whereas in declarative style, we describe the outcome, and then the system is smart enough that it handle everything for you, so you don't care, you just need to describe the outcome, and then the system will handle everything for you behind the hood. So that is a declarative style of programming. Now, that is why we need a mental shift in React. That is, we should think a program in a declarative ways, and then once we have that mental shift, then we can easily adapt writing program in React. So again, React is a declarative, efficient, and flexible JavaScript library for building user interfaces. Now, okay, let's look at why we need React and why React came in the first place. So if you look at Facebook, they have a lot of components, a lot of small things like chat bar, then you have profile pics, you have photo, you have a lot of components where each of these component does certain things, and it can also be that each components can be created separately. That is, for example, if you look at this small web demo, we have this is an application, and the menu bar can be of a separate component, and then you have the main page as the separate component, and then you have the side footer as a separate component. And if you look at this, the app is having three child, that is the menu bar, the main page, and the side footer. And the main page is also having three child, that is list item, and list item. So this is how we create component in React. That is, we are building each of these component individually and then plug them together in the applications. Now let's get started with a very small demo. That is, we need to create a React app. We use an application called create React app, and then you specify the name of your project, and then you change the directory into your project, and then you start the React application. Note that you need to have node version at least greater than 10.16 and the npm version greater than 5.6 on your machine. So I make an assumption that you have all this in place, and once you have this in place, then you can use this command to create React app. So let me quickly show you how this is done. So I'll present entire screen. So I will quickly go to my workspace. So are everyone seeing the screen?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. So we need to use npx, and let's name it same thing as my app. This will pull the dependencies from the internet, and it will create it will scaffold a bare metal React app. That is, you will have a kind of hello world React app once this is done. So this will take a couple of minutes, depend on your internet speed. It should be faster. So while we are waiting for that, we can move forward to discuss some other concept. Okay, so now before looking at the React application, we first need to have a little bit background of JavaScript function, which is a very simple concept. So what is if you been doing programming, then the function is kind of a small module that does specific things, and it has an input and it gives you an output. And here is a function in JavaScript. You describe it using the function keyword and the name of the function, and this number is an argument which is basically an input into the square function, and this returned the square of a number. This is one way of declaring a JavaScript function. The other way is to use anonymous function. That is, you define a variable square and you assign it to the anonymous function, and then give the argument, and this will return a square of a number. And you can use it square. You pass the argument be 10, 20, whatever, you will get the square of a number. So this is a JavaScript function. Now in this talk, what we will be doing is we'll build one simple application. We call it a kind of a small Meghalaya developer meetups, and here we have a kind of an input box where we can input the title of the talk and maybe attach with the speaker, and then we can click on this add button and it will add in our list. And also if you want to remove it, we can remove it. And this is a very simple application which looks like a to-do list. Of course it looks like a to-do list, but we rename it for just to be not to do to-do list all the time. And then in this we can what we will be doing is we will use a REST endpoint to insert data into the server, which we will be using mock API to do that. And then let's look back into the terminal. Yes, so this is so now I can change to the my app and start the application. So this compiled successfully, and now we can go to this URL, that is localhost 3000 port, and then our app is ready. So where is it? We can check these 3000, and here we have a React app, simple React app. Hello, it's a kind of hello world React app. Now let's look into the content of that application. So here we have the my app, which we just created, and we have what we call the package.json. So the package.json is a kind of a configuration file that you specify what the dependencies you want to have in your React application. Now there are a lot of dependencies, there are a lot of libraries available in React, and also in Node. You can go to npm website to check these libraries if you want, and you can install them in your application. So this is a very important file, which is package.json, and currently I'm using yarn to manage my application. You can also use npm to manage your application. And I have two folders, one is public and one is the source folder. Let's look first in the public folder. In the public folder you have the index.html, which is a simple HTML page, and inside this you have what is a div with an ID root, and the title of your app is React app. You can change this if you want. Maybe we can have make dev over here, and then what React does is, see, if you look at this, there is nothing over here, and React plug all the component inside this when it runs. So no need to worry about index.html. All you need to worry about here is to change the title of your application, and you are good with it. So you can leave this public as it is, and you can quickly go to the source folder where you have what the app.js. So the app.js is where you will need to code. You will design your own components, and then the React, what it does is it basically let me go to index.js first. It basically your React render your app, that is in this app that you will be designing, and then it will plug into the div tag inside the index.html. So no need to worry about this as well. This is all automatic. You no need to worry about this. You just need to look at the app.js. Now what we will do is we'll clean this up, that is we'll remove everything here, and we'll save it, and then maybe we can have some small hello world here so that we make sure that it works as expected. So we have the hello world printed in the screen. Now our goal is, let's look at the specification of the UI that we, so this is our goal, is to create this web page. So what we can do is we can segregate this into component. So for example, the Meghalaya developer Meetup will be one header. It is header component. This will be the input component. This will be the list component, and each of these are the list item component. So let's do that. Let's create a folder called components and create header.js. So now we can create maybe we'll create a function called header, and then we need to write this export default the header. So this is important because this allowed this function to be available in your application outside of this folder, your app.js will be able to use this header component. So now we return it, and inside this we can have our HTML tag. So I use div here, and then this is your header. Okay, so we have the header component over here, and then inside this we can use the header component, which automatically import from your component / header. Okay, so now let's look into this one. So we have the header component rendering. Now we need to do more styling on the header.js. Maybe we can have, so now specifying the class name, you can specify using the class name, but we will do the inline style. So we have inline style over here, and then double curly bracket, and inside this is your style. So now I can say the width to be something 100%, the height to be maybe around 100 pixel probably, the background color to be what background color we have here, I'm not sure, so maybe dark blue. So someone is joining, I guess. Yes. Okay, so now we have the color dark blue, and then we need to change maybe the color of the text. So we can maybe wrap this, maybe we can say the font size to be around 32, and then the color of the text to be white. So note that if you look at this this convention, if you are using if you are using CSS, this basically what you are doing is you are doing background color this way, right? So in React, what they do is they replace this with what they call a camel notation. So you do it like this. So this is a different way of representing it in React. So now I have the header here, and then we can have this text. Maybe we need some padding, maybe around 10 padding over here, and what else do we need? Okay, for I think this is okay as for now. Maybe we can reduce the size to 50 to make it a little bit more better. So this is fine as for now. Maybe font weight, maybe, so we can have it bold. Okay, so this is the header component, and next is what we need to do is let's look into this thing. So we need the input and the plus button. So we can create new component called input.js. Again, same function, write function, and then returned and export default input. And inside this we need to have maybe a div to wrap all the input. So we have an input here, and we have a button, maybe add, maybe you can have a plus. And then once we have this, we can again import it in your application, and we are having an input but without any style. So what we can do is we can style that input. Maybe we can style it directly here, so we can use style. So this will be some padding, maybe 10 pixel padding, and also we need some style over here. Style this probably the maybe the font size to be maybe around 32, and then the border color probably. Okay, we have a little bit, yes, style in the button as well. So let's increase the font size to be 32. Yes, some padding we need, maybe around 10. Yes, and some margin. Yes, so I think we no need to worry about padding. Margin is enough. So we have here, we can type something. This is introduction to JavaScript, and when we hit add, we expect it to have to add it to the list. So this is the input component. Now what we need to do is create this list, right? So let's create that one. New, we first need to have a list item in that list. Again, same thing, list item, and this return the list item. Again, we'll wrap it in a div. Again, we need to export default list item, and here is the list, right? So what we'll need to do is maybe intro, just have it as for now, introduction. Maybe you can have it something like yeah, introduction to JS, just a template, and we need one button maybe to delete it. Again, maybe we can wrap it in span here, and maybe again some style over here, maybe the font size would be 32. Let's look at it. Oh, we have to import it here. Oh, before that we need to have a list component. So what we just construct is this part, that is we have this and the remove button, and these are list item, and the list component will hold this list item. So we need to create a list component, list.js, and again same thing, so this will return okay, so this will return the list, right, the list item. Okay, a list item, we need to import it, and here we have the list item, and we can have multiple, right? So I can copy it as for now, we can have multiple list item, and then finally we import the list. So we have this, so we have introduction to JS, and we have this without any style. Maybe we can style a little bit for the list item. Maybe we can have something, so maybe the font size should work actually, this one, and maybe we can have a kind of a padding, maybe the background color, some gray, and then the color of the text to be white. Okay, so that is and maybe in this pattern we can have some padding around 10. Okay, we have some padding over there, and then we have this maybe we have some background color over here. Forget about this one, maybe we can tweak it later on. So the goal of this is to write component in React. Basically we have the header component, Then we have the input component with the plus button, and then we have the list item, and then the list component which contain this list item. So instead of delete, maybe we can use the minus. Probably this is, yeah, this is much better. So this is a simple component in React, and okay, let's present this. So we just finished with constructing this component in React without any dynamic data, and let's look at some concept of React. Now, some of the concept of React is what we call a state. Basically, within a component, you have a state, and this is managed within your component. Now, suppose you want to pass data into other component, what you have to do is you have to use what we call the props. So the props will allow you to pass data into your child component, and also it will allow the parent to pass some functionality where a component can perform some activities and it notify the parent. So this is how props is very useful in React. So I'll look into this very important concept in React, the state and the prop. Now React component is done. Now we look into React state. How do we define React state? So React state, you can use a hook called useState. So useState will basically return two things. The first one is a variable that is to read the state, and the other is a function to write the state. And you can also have the initialize. You can initialize the state in your React in this React hook. Now let's go back into the application. Now, for example, if you look at the list component, or list component is moving into this. It's supposed to be in the component. Let's shift it and move it and update. Yes, and I think it should work fine. Okay, so there is some problem with that. Maybe we have to update the list. Yes. Okay. Okay, let's refresh this. Maybe we have to rerun it since we moved the. Okay, so we have to run in the bot. So now it's running in 301. Okay. So it is resolving. Let's see what is the problem. Cannot resolve in the list, right? So let's look at this one. Maybe we can re-import this everything. Let's remove this. Okay. Yes. So now we are back to the same thing. So this is a small glitch when you import, when you move the component into other folder. So this is okay. So now what we are talking about is about passing props into the component. Now, for example, now this list item, we want to display something something maybe instead of hard-coded introduction to JS, we can maybe pass the data. For example, the title of this is to some data, for example, the introduction to JS, and this is title equal to introduction to Java, and then the title to be some maybe WordPress, right? So we have these three things, and these are actually the props. So now how to use them? So we need to use a props as is a parameter, and in here we can use it. Props.title, and we have all of this. Right now, this is nice, but you can have maybe it's not very good to have in all the places all the props to again write like this. Maybe you can use a shorthand like this, where and this is the title. So this is the same thing, but look cleaner and much better. So now if you have other props called ID, then you can add it in this declaring this by taking all the props content and use it as a variable here. So this is the props, and this now what we need to do is we need to add the content and then populate it here, right? So let's go to our app.js, and inside this we can define a state. Now we can say constant maybe the meetup data, meetups. Instead of meetup we can say list, so that it will not confuse us. So we have a list of all meetups, and then I use the state. Use state, we should import it from React. Yes, it imports successfully, and this use state is basically an array, right? So our goal is to capture this data and then insert it into our list. So we can go to the input, that is the input over here, and again here we need to have some kind of a state again. So this is the text that we want to capture, and this is the set text. So use state, initially nothing is there, and then we can capture an event in the input, that is on change. This is a function, and we want to say set text to the item. So this will trigger an event, and event will have the data target.value, right? So this is an event object, and in the event object you can access the value of that event using e.target.value. And to clarify that, we can use a console.log.e.target.value and check it in the console. Clear this out. Okay, so we can type in here, and as you see that on type of on change of this text, it's basically triggered this event. So this is nice, and what the job of this is to set the text. Basically on every change of this, it update the state text. Now we need to pass this text data to this parent, that is the app. So basically what let's look at the slide again, or let's look at this application. Maybe we can check the slide here. So this is the input, and we have the list component, and then the whole of this is wrapped using the app component. So whenever we type here, we need to send the data to the app so that it will be able to pass it down to the list component. So what we need to do is okay, so we need to write one function. We call it maybe add meetup, and this will, maybe we can have a list item, or instead of list item we can have a meetup. And then what we can do is we can pass this to this input. So this is a props again, and this is passing the function to the input component, so it passes as a props. So now if I click on the input, I can now use the props. So basically I can use at Meetup, make sure that the name the name matches the one that you pass. It should exactly match this one, so I should be careful with this. And then what I can do is I have the text now, so this will capture on change of the input text, and the button will capture the final text. So on change, or on click, sorry, on click of the button, I want to add Meetup, so I pass the text as a parameter. Now I can quickly go in here and verify that I have the Meetup data. Okay, props is not defined, so we need to look at here. You have to make sure you have the props there. Okay, now go to console, intro, add, so we have the intro appear in that location where we print out, right? So this is so now what we can do is we can then push it to this list. So how to push it, because basically we need to set the list to the updated list once this is done. So what I can do is I can set list to have, so a list will contain the existing list as well as the new one, right? What interesting to do is maybe we can construct a new data. We call it data like this, and then we can define, we can say that that is the title. Maybe this is not a good wording. Maybe we can have a title here. So we basically assign a value here, titled, and then we finally pass the data. And in the list, now we have the list of data, and then we need to render it in this item. That is, we need to render it here. So what we can do, again, we need to pass the list of data. So maybe what is the naming is up to you. Maybe I can say it's a data, and this is a list contain of this data. Then inside this, I can now use loop, that is kind of again, this is a props, and then again the same thing, data, and then data dot map. This is basically looping each one of this item, and then this is a title, maybe a meetup. This is the naming convention depending on your style. Then this will be what I'll do is I will copy from this one, paste it here, and then we can remove all of this, and instead of the title we can have it data dot titled. Okay, sorry, no, it should not be data, it is meetup meetup dot title. So this basically this map basically loop through each element in that array, and this is that element, and then replace it with this list item, that is basically return a list of item to this diff. So if there are two, you replace it with two list item. Okay, so we see that cannot read property map of data. Okay, so let's look at we need to save this, and then let's look at it. So we have here okay, Okay, so there it is. So it's basically replacing each one of it. So let's look at what is the problem. Oh, so this basically we need to use this spreading operator. Spreading operator basically putting everything in this list and then assign back to list, right? So this is a spreading operator in ES6 JavaScript. So this is important, and then maybe we can test it there. Okay, introduction to JS. Yes, so we have a working application to add the data. Maybe we can use maybe we can have one more function to delete it. Delete meetup and delete yes, in this case we need an ID for the meetup. Maybe that is yes, we need to tweak on that, so we'll not do that. Maybe we can assign an ID for this particular data and then use it to remove it from that list. So this is how we create in React, and we can use this thing and build as a component. So concept here is that in the input you have capture your data, and then once you have it, you use a function given by the parent component, and then which pass as a props, and then insert the data into the state of your parents component. So the props is basically giving you this things to modify the data. Okay, so let's go back to the slide. So we cover the props, that is the parents passing the props to the component, and then the component also use this function which is a props, and then pass and then invoke it by giving the parameter to the parent. That is one very nice thing. And also we discuss about use state using in the component, which is in both the inputs as well as in the list component. So this we covered React state. Okay, so now next let's move to a more practical where you maybe day to day you have to do this. That is, given your React application, which is a client, you need somehow to communicate to the server and fetch the data or insert the data into your server or whatever. This is a typical day-to-day life of a developer. You always need to communicate to the server. So in React there is one library called Axios, which allowed you to do an HTTP request, which is basically an HTTP library, and this is very handy. You can I'll show you how to use that. But before that, we need to install Axios. That is, we need to so Axios, you can go to the npm and use the npm I Axios, but I'm using yarn. So what I will do is I will install using yarn. So let's go back and yarn add Axios. So then we have Axios in our system. That is, you can verify by looking at the package.js. Where is it? Here we have the Axios there in your package, and maybe you need to restart this one. I'm not sure, but usually when we install new libraries, again we need to somewhere the port is not available. Okay, so we have the Axios ready. Now next is what I'll be using it. I'll be using a server in the internet, that is a mock API server. That is, it allowed you to prototype your API in the server. So let's go ahead and see that. So I have the demo here, and we have a meetup. So let's see, you can do that as well. You can create a kind of a server here, and so this is basically your endpoint where you can use as a mock API. So what we need to do is we need to create when we add component, or when we add our meetup, we will post it to this particular API. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Now before that, we need to maybe constant API URL, and you have to copy this endpoint. Okay, and then meetup. This is your meetup, and then when we need to do this, maybe we can use Axios to post the data into the API URL and the data, right? So data. So this is how we do it, and this is asynchronous call. That is, you need to wait till it completed. So we need to use a keyword await for asynchronous call in JavaScript, and you need to make this function also to be an asynchronous function. And what basically we need to do is we can wrap this around a try catch, so that we capture the error where it occurs, and then we can get back the response, right? So the response is basically the data that we will be taking, and once this is done, maybe we can set back the response here. Instead of here, we can this one respond.data. I'm not sure what is the response going to be, but we can check that using the console.log the response. So now the add meetup is basically not directly using only within the application. It's now using the Axios, using the server to push the data. So now let's go back to the application, refresh it. Oh, Axios is not defined. We need to import the Axios. Here we go, and let's look at the console so that make sure everything works as expected. And then we have intro. Let's have an intro. Okay, so I think we are having a response here, and the data is intro. Now we'll have to cross check in the mock API whether we have the data or not. Yes, we have the data, so this works perfectly fine. And then what about this item here? So nothing's in here, so that is we want to do something on there. So let's look at the data first. Not this one. So the data is consists of the ID as well as the title, which is an intro, and then we need to instead of doing this, maybe we can pull the data from the server. So there is let's define one more function called fetch meetup. And this again will use the Axios await, which is now a get method, and the API URL. And again, this we need to have respond, and again this is an async. And once we have this, we have set list to be a respond.data. And again, we need to wrap this in try catch, just as usual. And then we maybe have some console there. Okay, so we have the fetch data. Now I will introduce you to one hook. We call it use effect hook. So use effect hook is a function that call when the React completed a rendering. So basically, when we need to call an API when an application boot, or when you start your application, you want to call an API for initialize your data, then you use a use effect for that. So I can use use effect, and very important, use effects will need your function, that is anonymous function. This is just a function, and then this square bracket over here, they are the dependencies. That is, suppose if I put this as a list, then the use effect will trigger whenever the list change. So if I put here like this, it means that this does not have any dependencies, which means that it will only load at runtime, at load time. Whereas if you want something like if something change here, then run this effect. So you need to have some kind of a flag that specify when it changed. So as for now, we have nothing, no dependencies, and then we call the fetch meetup. So now, yes, so now we have the data, right? So we have intro data coming up from the server. So again, maybe we can, instead of because this is an async method, we can have something like this. Add the data here, and then behind the hood it goes to the server, so that your user will not know that it's happening behind the hood, right? So this is how you can use Axios to fetch the data from the server. Okay, so and the final one is conditional rendering. That is, you condition what component to render depend on your condition. So one use case for that is, for example, when you have something here, let's say you have something here, and then maybe some kind of busy happening here, then you can condition the rendering. So for example, so what you can do is, yes, one more thing is, best is to have it here. Now if the data maybe dot length probably is equal to 0, then maybe you render something, else you return something. So this is a kind of conditional rendering. So we can have something like this. So we have no item. So what we can do, we can go ahead and remove everything here. I think it should be nothing. Still there. How to remove these? I think something like this. Yeah, 0. Yeah, 0. So now we can refresh this. Yes, no item. And then when you have something, you have that item. Okay, so in summary, we discussed about declarative versus imperative, and we talk about React components, how to construct React, and then we look into what is React states, and then what are the different hooks. So we cover use states and use effect, when to use effect, and when to use state. And also we cover about using Axios for fetching data from REST endpoint. And finally, we look into conditional rendering. And thank you. Take care and stay safe, and I'm open to question and answer.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernard. That was a good presentation. But as you can see, I think there was a lag in the video. So I know that you have recorded the video, no? So Gabyang Lada, if you can actually, share the video and maybe even put the project on GitHub.
Okay.
And then you can share it to the group for everyone. It'd be a good, it's a good startup React So thank you very much, Bernard.
Okay,
And
welcome.
since now we've actually come to the end, and then if you have any questions, you can actually go ahead and ask Bernard. So for any questions, I'll leave it to Bernard to answer.
Okay, thank you, Krishan. Okay, any question? We will publish. I mean, we will obviously put this in YouTube and maybe the source code as well, as Karshan said. So, any question regarding anything which I can answer? So, I'm open for question.
Currently, there are no question. There maybe find any problems that you have here.
Okay. Okay, then thank you very much and take care. Stay safe.
Okay, thank you, Bernard.
Okay, bye.
Okay, thank you, Bernard.